16, and our invocation and moment of silence by Vice Chairman Riley.
I'd like to start with an Irish blessing. Always remember to forget the things that made you sad, but never forget to remember the things that made you glad. Always remember to forget the friends that proved untrue, but never forget to remember those that have stuck by you. Always remember to forget the troubles that passed away, but never forget to remember the blessings that come each day. As we enter spring, may we all plant the seeds of love, community, and friendship, and teach our children to nurture and cultivate these things so that they may grow into wonderful, successful, caring adults with deep roots to help them withstand life's times of flood and drought. Let us pray for the health, safety, happiness, and growth of their bodies, minds, and souls. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
God bless America. Thank you, Ms. Riley. Fire evacuation in case of an emergency or fire. There is an exit out the rear of the chamber, or you can go out my left, your right, and then take a left down the stairs and out the rear door to the parking lot. Kathy, roll call, please.
Mrs. Riley?
Here.
Mrs. LeBlanc?
Here.
Mrs. Hernandez?
Here.
Mr. Neville?
Here.
Mr. Ryder?
Here.
Mr. Renier?
Here.
Mrs. DePoe?
Here.
Mr. Rutledge?
Here.
Chairman Krizel.
Here. Board guest, Mr. Drezek.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Our first board guest tonight is actually you. Those of you may be aware that March is Board Appreciation Month. So when you came to your seats today, you noticed that there were plentiful gifts left for all of you by not us, but by our students at every different level throughout the Enfield Public Schools. We also at this time have a short video that are some of our youngest learners who it's a little too late for them to attend the board meeting, but asked that we play something they prepared for you in recognition for all that you do for the children of Enfield. And I was smart enough this time to make Mr. Barassa come, so there shall be no technical difficulties.
Uh-oh, pressure's on.
Put him on the spot.
But while that's warming up, you'll notice there's gifts from all of our different levels that are there for you, and also in front of the board. Each of our intermediate schools actually made a painting, but those are actually each student's thumbprint that's part of the painting. So you guys can decide and fight amongst yourselves where you'd like to put the three of them.
when we go outside. dance. I get to play in the basement. I like being my mommy kissing Twagon on the bus. I like school, but I like playing with my friend. Just this balloon and not making happy decisions. Okay, I like Play-Doh.
They're clapping for you, Guy, because it went off flawlessly. We thought it was appropriate to begin tonight's meeting with board appreciation and board recognition. I'll say this again, we have a good-sized audience at the beginning of the meeting so that everyone get to hear this. It's a reminder to everyone in the community and anyone who's watching that you guys are all volunteers. For some of the new members, I have to remind you once again that you don't get a check in 2 years when your term is up. You do this out of your goodness of your hearts and your dedication to the community, and more importantly to the kids in the Enfield Public Schools. So even though these are very small tokens of our appreciation, we just wanted to make sure that we thanked you for all that you do and the time that you volunteer and give up for our school. So on behalf of everyone, thank you very much.
On behalf of the board and everybody, we thank everyone for all the gifts. And we are here for the children as one, and we appreciate it very much.
And I have to remind that the children you saw in the video are referred to as our tiny humans. Moving on to our next board guest. At this point, I'd like to introduce Dr. Goodnight, who is the district's music director. She's here to explain a little bit about the Eastern Regional Middle School Music Festival that our students participated in on March 9th and 10th. And I'm not going to say anything more because she will do a better job recognizing the students who greatly deserve it.
Actually, I'm going to introduce a couple of teachers who work with these students,
Yeah.
preparing them.
You want to grab that wireless mic there? Right there on the end. Because the control room will come running in here quickly and keep talking.
Testing. Okay. Yes, we have some programs from the festival that we're going to pass out to you. And I just want to introduce the two teachers who work with these students, preparing them for their auditions and spending hours after school preparing them for the festival. And they are going to introduce the students, and then a couple of the students are going to tell you about the festival. Mrs. Karn helped the instrumental students, and Miss Jakes helped the vocal students. So I'll let Miss Jakes begin. And students, please come forward.
Mrs. Karn and I had the extreme privilege of bringing 11 JFK students to this festival, March 9th and 10th. They represented JFK and Enfield so well and beautifully and did just a fantastic job. We have a few representatives who would like to share their own experiences with you. Oh, I'm sorry. Let me introduce them. I'm going to do the choir kids. Chris. Oh, okay. You can introduce yourselves. There you go.
Hi, my name is Gary Chavez. I'm in 8th grade. I play with the bass clarinet.
I'm Christina Mamano. I'm in 8th grade, and I did the vocal.
I'm Cassie Fortune. I am in 8th grade, and I did the vocal. I'm Emily Vandal. I'm in 8th grade, and I also did the vocal.
I'm Carter Bouchard. I'm in 8th grade, and I play the alto saxophone.
I'm Lindsay Chikowski, and I play the bass clarinet, and I went in the orchestra. I'm Anna Bemis. I'm in 7th grade, and I play the euphonium.
My name's Abby Nasula. I play the flute, and I'm in 7th grade.
Well, I'll start off by saying I hope you guys are having a great night. But if you don't know me, yeah, my name is Harry Chavez. I'm in 8th grade. I play the bass clarinet, and my journey has been long and hard to get where I am today. My 3 years at JFK Music have been a great adventure. In 6th grade, I was a small flute player trying to achieve big things. I then continued my journey to move the clarinet, French horn, and finally the bass clarinet, a specialty instrument. My experience with the music programs has led me to great things. From that little 6th grader, I now play in the Springfield Youth Orchestra, recently won gold medal at MICA, and received a first chair bass clarinet in the Eastern Regional Band. And in the Eastern Regional Band, we played with some of the best kids in the state. We learned and experienced great things. For the students, we all connected and built great bonds and made families. So I'd like to thank you guys for supporting us and letting this opportunity be great. So thank you.
So hi, once again, I'm Emily Vandal, and I was in the Eastern Regional's mixed choir. And this was an amazing opportunity. And when we had auditions, so I've auditioned for things before, but this one was the one that I was probably most nervous for because it was something that I've never done before. And but when we found out that we got into the choir, we were really happy. And we honestly couldn't believe it. And my score was a 162 out of 170. And then, but when we got there, it was once again really nerve-wracking because we didn't know anyone else, and we were all spread out around the room. So I thought I was going to be lonely. But I found 2 other girls who sat next to me, and they were really nice, and I'm still in contact with them. And when we had the actual show, I had to lead 2 groups, the sopranos and the bass section, down the aisle while we were running, and I thought we were going to trip, but I didn't. So that ended well, and it was a really, really fun experience, and thank you for letting us go to this festival. I appreciate it, and it was really fun, so thank you.
I'm Lindsay Chikowski. I'm in the 7th grade. I've been playing the clarinet for about 3 years now, but I was introduced to the bass clarinet about a year ago. I really enjoy it, and then I was given the chance to participate in the Eastern Regional Music Festival. The auditions were scheduled for November 11th, and I started to practice nonstop. It was a lot of hard work, and when my results came back, I was the highest scoring bass clarinet out of all the people who had auditioned, and I was really surprised and excited. But then I was invited to play in the orchestra. So it was my first ever time in an orchestra and my first ever time auditioning for anything. And my first group practice was on Friday, March 9th, and I got on a school bus with my other peers, but my experience was a bit unique. I was the only JFK student chosen for the orchestra, and I got to meet and talk to students from other schools who I've never gotten the chance to know. I experienced a lot of different things. It was different playing outside of a traditional band. I got the chance to play under a director who taught differently than I was accustomed to. He really brought out the best in everyone, and he helped the individuals connect in a very short amount of time. I learned a new instrument, auditioned for the Eastern Regional Music Festival, and I was top scoring bass clarinet. I earned myself a spot in the orchestra, and I met people from all over Connecticut, worked with a director I had never met before, and the entire experience was amazing. Thank you.
They didn't want to take your questions.
I'm sorry.
No, you're good. Don't worry about it. I'm
Any
just kidding.
comments from the, go ahead, Ms. LeBlanc.
I want to take the moment to congratulate all of you. And one of the common themes I found when you were saying is, I had the experience, I had the experience, I had the experience. So I'm happy to be part of a school system that is allowing students to have experiences. And these are just the first of many experiences. You were nervous, you had to make new friends, you didn't want to trip, I still am like that. So it's the first of many, and I'm glad that you were able to go and conquer your fears. And not only did you conquer your fears, you all did so well. With that being said, that's something I'm learning, and I want to say this because Mrs. Goodnight is here. That is something I'm learning about the music department in Enfield. My youngest student plays in the band, and ever since he stepped foot into 6th grade with Mr. Powers could never know the impact he's had on my son, and the impact band has had on him. And I was at MICA. Congratulations to the band. They won the gold, and they're waiting to find out if they're going to play at the Boston Symphony Orchestra or in Worcester. And that was incredible to watch because I got to see the other schools who were mainly just high school students, where JFK is a mixed ensemble. It was definitely something that I appreciated being a part of. The other thing that I love is that the music teachers are so passionate about it, and they want to see you guys succeed, and they want to see you guys go to that next level. And I hope with what we're doing at the high school and different things, when you guys get there, that you can keep achieving and having experiences and going after your dreams. But again, kudos to the students, the teachers, and Mrs. Goodnight, because I think the music department is fantastic, and for me personally, I know I'm not the only one, it has really made a positive impact on my son. So thank you.
Mr. Neville.
Ditto. All the things that Tina said about the music department, certainly I've found to be true over the 38 and a half years that I spent mostly at JFK. I always found out that the kids who are in music had a passion for it. And it showed not only in the music education, which was just astounding, but throughout their career at the middle school and following them up to the high school as well. They had the ability to try new things, and they were encouraged to try new things by Ms. Goodnight and Mr. Power and Ms. Karn and so on, because it was the time to try out, and they did. And they worked with a number of other students, and it's funny. It's fun to try things out together, because you don't have a fear of failing at that point in time, and you're just willing, you're enthused, you're passionate, you want to try it out. And the middle school's been really, really good for that. And Mrs. Goodnight's stewardship of the program has just increased the size of it. Even when I used to meet with her, she was always trying new things and she's very, very creative in terms of that. And we were always expanding the program. And it's to her credit that the program has gotten to where it is, along with the staff that she's brought on board. So thank you very much. You're thanking us. We're thanking you. This is the reason we ran for office. This is the gravy, and we just thoroughly enjoy, hearing you guys, hearing your accomplishments, and seeing you in action. So thank you from all of us.
Ms. Riley.
I just wanted to congratulate all of you guys. It's amazing to hear that some of you learned how to play a new instrument in all of this. I'm completely wowed. Thank you for representing the town of Enfield and our school system so well. So you know what I'm going to do? A standing ovation for you guys, because that was awesome.
Anyone else? Thank you again. It's great to hear that these programs exist and you guys take advantage of them. So we'll continue now with Mr. Drezek.
Don't go too far, Dr. Goodnight. Obviously, we're extremely proud of our tremendously talented students, our extremely dedicated staff members who get these children prepared, and we also have to thank the families of these students who endure a lot when it comes to having children who play instruments. I understand what you all go through, so I appreciate that, and thank you as well for your patience and your dedication. Our next guests, we have actually two very special guests. Some of you may look familiar to you. We have two Enfield High School students who have now become television stars. Some of you may be aware that a few weeks ago, if we weren't snowed out for the last board meeting, we had on our agenda some special guests. As through the budget process, I had made reference that we're going to begin a theater program at Enfield High School next year. And as part of that, it actually was a concerned parent who sent us a notice saying that there's a potential for some grant out there to help with theater programs for high schools that don't have them. And in order to complete it, it had to be actually completed by the school, so it wasn't us. And part of it had to be completed by students in the program. So we were very fortunate to have two students who not only took the initiative to help complete the grant, actually took the initiative to complete the video that went along with the grant. And because of that, Enfield High School was awarded a $10,000 grant through NBC Universal to assist in our music and our newly created theater program. So we've asked Cole and Brendan, as well as Dr. Goodnight, to come up here and possibly introduce yourselves. You guys aren't shy. Come on up.
Okay, I just wanted to introduce these two people and thank them for helping us with the grant application. We received information, as you said, about this just a week or so after you approved adding these new courses next year at the high school, so it just came at the perfect time. And I knew that the 2-minute video was going to probably be the most important part of the application, so I also knew that we had two very talented actors. I've seen them in plays over the last few years, so I asked them to help with this, and they jumped at the challenge, and they started batting around some ideas, and we taped a couple of times through, and actually Cole wrote the script. He did the editing of the final video, adding graphics and words and transitions, and just made it really special. And there were hundreds of applications from all over the country, I believe about 1,000. So this had to stand out to the people on the grant committee. And again, I attribute them, and they can tell you a little bit more about it. Cole Wood and Brendan Turner.
Hi, thank you for having us both here. I'm sure Brendan's also very excited to be here.
It's working.
Oh, okay, cool. You think I know how to use a microphone by now? You'd be surprised. But yeah, Dr. Goodnight's right. This was a very important part of the application. She wrote the essay component for it, and she had tasked us with making a video. I can't say that I've ever felt any more pressure than knowing that I could either make or break a school theater program with a simple 2-minute video. So thank God it worked. And Brendan and I are both pretty busy guys. And with rehearsal for The Music Man, which we're performing, we kind of, I don't want to say forgot, but prioritized. And then the due date for this snuck up on us. But we were still able to pull through. We put together a really nice script, and we sat down in our chorus teacher's room, and we taped it. And I remember talking to Brendan the whole time, and we knew that we had to make it serious enough to bring up the real issues of why we need the money, but we need to make it funny enough and unique enough so that people would be able to recognize it when it started. Because that's how you catch somebody's attention. I know for me that this is incredibly important because, well, when I was a freshman and Mr. Longy was still the principal, I remember the first words that he gave at orientation was, "Freshmen, join a club." That was his most important piece of advice. And I chose the Lamplighters because, well, they were handing out flyers everywhere. That's not a joke. Now it's the most important part of my life, and it feels really good knowing that I can make a difference.
said a lot of pretty good things. I'm going to have to pretty much agree with Cole on every aspect of everything he said. Not only was it, of course, important to him, it was important to me as well. And I think him and I, if you don't mind me speaking for you, him and I definitely took it on a more personal level, that we can somehow kind of open the door to a future of new and improved lamplighters throughout the years, even long after we're gone. And this grant opportunity was absolutely fantastic. Even coming up with the script pretty last minute. The difficulties, exactly. It was really nice, just as we were going through the process of the video, whether or not we were going to get the grant or not. The fact that we tried was definitely a very was very inspirational for myself, and I'm sure for Cole as well. And we can't thank you guys enough for bringing this to our attention.
And our plans to spend the $10,000. A lot of curricular materials we're going to need for these new classes, textbooks, scene books for the kids to read from. We hope to also purchase things that the lamplighters can use in the after-school program too. A scrim, which I never knew what a scrim was, but I guess it's really important for set changes, and some floor mics and lighting things that they need. We've got a whole list of things we want to purchase.
Ms. Riley, hold on, we got questions here.
Not off the hook yet.
You're not
guys.
getting away that quick.
Of course.
Yeah.
Ms. Riley.
Yes. So I'm beyond impressed. And when I heard that that you guys got this grant, I was like jumping for joy because I love to watch theater.
Did you see our reaction video?
I did not, but I'm like curious. Can you guys send us like the video clip? Because I'm impressed. Cool. That would be awesome. Thank you. And congratulations, you guys. That's awesome. Thank you.
Anyone else? Ms. Hernandez.
So thespian to thespian. I am so wildly impressed, not just with you, but with the other artists that came forward tonight about, and the recurring theme for me is performance under pressure. I think those are the moments that you really learn what you're capable of, and you were capable of getting a $10,000 competitive grant. That's huge. And so thank you. When we heard about the proposed theater curriculum, we were all so wildly excited for it. But, you know, it's just wonderful that it became yours. And so I actually have a question for you. So I have my own personal experience with theater, and theater means something to me beyond performance. What does theater mean to you now, since the day that you got a lamplighter flyer?
Yeah. Well, I pretend like I need this microphone. I think.
Well, you need it through the TV, so.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yes. You're
on YouTube.
We are live. We are live.
Oh. Okay. Well, now that I've made a fool of myself on television, allow me to answer your question. Theater, to me, it's to sound cliche, it's a lifestyle, and it has definitely taken me on a career path, and it's influenced my entire life. And I think one of the reasons I was excited about this is because whenever you talk to anybody that's accomplished something, you hear a lot, well, I did this myself. And for me, that's not true. And I think for everybody, that's not true. I've had a lot of help along the way. If it wasn't for Mr. Long, if it wasn't for my mother, if it wasn't for my directors. And I think that this is important because this is going to be another person's help. When I was applying for college, I found it very hard to cite certain times where I could show my education in theater. And it had always been my biggest, I don't want to say complain, but wish that our schools could do something more with that rather than just an after-school program. So I was ecstatic when even just the idea of being able to open up someone else's door. That's what theater means for me.
So good with words. So good. Drama actually completely changed my life as well. I used to be an athlete. I played baseball for 5 years, and all of a sudden, right when I saw people performing on stage, I was completely blown away. It was crazy to see that people were playing different characters that were different personalities and just branching off of different people, and like it was so cool that I was like, I need to be a part of this, and it pretty much started off in JFK for me. The first play I pretty much ever did was Once on This Island, and that audition and that whole play process, I met new people that were all fantastic. It was all like a secondary family, and it was just truly amazing. And that's why this grant, as I previously stated, Cole and I definitely took it very personal, because drama is our second family. And sometimes when things get rough, we have people to turn to in the drama club that we consider to be real family, and that's pretty much why we did this.
Anyone else? Well, put a plug in for your next play. When's the dates? There we go. Hold on. The camera. Turn around. The camera. Zoom in on that. He's zooming in. There it is.
There you go. All right.
I asked, so. What's the date? What's the dates? Tell us the dates.
April 27th and 28th. You got it.
I went and saw you guys last year for Guys and Dolls. You did an awesome job. It's a play that I did back in middle school, by the way, but I will leave it at that.
Thank you very much.
And it was an awesome job, so I look forward to the next one. So thank you, guys. And thank you for putting your hard work and getting that grant for us.
Thank you.
So put it right on that table there. You want there's a switch on it. You can just make sure it's turned off.
Jeez.
There we go. I know you know how to do these things. So. Mr. Drezek, next, please.
One thing before they all scoot out, one thing we didn't mention earlier on was Enfield High School was the only high school in the state of Connecticut that received the grant through NBC. So, I cannot articulate myself any better than those two young men did, so I'm not going to try. But what I will mention, because I know she doesn't always like to have the spotlight thrust upon her, but obviously you saw the workings of two of our music programs and our new theater program for next year. That all falls under the direction of Dr. Goodnight. And I just would like to say publicly, there is no bigger champion education for arts education in the Enfield Public Schools than Dr. Goodnight. So thank you again, Marilyn. If there's any youngsters who are getting close to their bedtime and they want to go now, now's a good time. Nothing personal, Gene.
Thank you all for coming out.
Thank you.
Thank you.
6D, Mr. Drezek.
And our final special board guest, we saved the best for last, is I'd like to welcome the Town of Enfield Youth and Family Service Director, Jean Hoy, as well as Joan Lawson, who's the co-chair of the Enfield Togetherness Coalition. The ETC is committed to preventing youth substance misuse and abuse. And I also see that Councilman Arnone is joining them, so I'd like to welcome Councilman Arnone as well. And at this point, I'm going to regret it. I turn the mic over to Jean, and you are free to say what you wish. I will end up doing something as a result of this. I'm just putting it out.
That was a hard act to follow there, yeah. So, right.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us. So we're the Enfield Together Coalition. This is Joan Lawson, and I'm co-chair Tom Arnone, so we're both co-chairs. I'm here as a co-chair now, as not a counselor. And the Enfield Together Coalition's mission is to raise public awareness, educate parents and youth, and enforce underage drinking and substance abuse laws with a commitment to prevent and reduce substance abuse in our youth.
And what we did was the Enfield Together Coalition partnered with the Enfield Public Schools Athletic Department to create a public service announcement with the goal of reducing adolescents' access to prescription drugs. The PSA aimed at parents utilizes community champions to engage parents as part of the answer to prevent youth substance misuse.
So we have some thank yous. So thank you to Corey O'Connell, the athletic coordinator, James Liver, the football head varsity coach, and Amy Bartholomew, field hockey assistant, varsity coach, helped create the PSA in making new connections to ensure the prevention of youth substance abuse.
So this is a quick 30-second video.
The #1 place teens get prescription medication is from friends or family without them knowing. Here's how you as parents can help. Monitor your medication, lock them away, and deposit any unused drugs in the drop box at the Enfield Police Department.
Be aware, educate one another, and as coaches, parents, and community members, we can put an end to teen prescription drug misuse. Together, we can make a difference.
So thank you for letting us show our PSA, and thank you for your wonderful partnership. And I particularly want to thank Chris Drezick for his support and championship of all things prevention, whether it's suicide prevention, mental health promotion, and recently supporting a new trauma-informed school mental health. Chris and I just returned from a meeting with Senator Murphy this afternoon where we were learning how to address the opioid epidemic in our community. And we know how to do prevention really well. We have done suicide prevention for many years. Thank you, Tim Neville, from the bottom of my heart for being there, from day one when we had to address a real epidemic in our community. We know how to do this, and a result of that, our town funds Rachel's Challenge, we fund Training and Resource Development Committee, and we fund crisis response. We also fund Question, Persuade, and Refer. And what that is educating our 9th graders and all staff to recognize a youth when they're struggling with depression and showing signs of suicidality, and how we have to be comfortable asking the question of our youth, are you feeling like harming yourselves? Because they don't share that with us. We have to have eyes on them, and we have to be asking those questions, and we have to be identifying our kids early. So my ask is that we need to do the same thing with substance use prevention. We know through best practice that we need to train our school administrators and our adults to recognize when you start using substances, and we have to be comfortable asking that question of our youth. I'm concerned you're using substances, so that we can connect with them and get them into resource before a tragedy happens. Just with like suicide, we want to intervene before they end their life. We can do the same thing with substances, but we have to have that conversation, and we have to intervene before youth develop serious consequences with arrest or expulsion or criminalizing children who are developing substance use disorders. So I think I have permission to say we're going to start that conversation to make that happen in schools. And thank you again for your support.
And on behalf of the Enfield Together Coalition, Chris, we'd like to present you with this appreciation certificate. And we also have for the coaches, if you would be so gracious to give that to them. We are so appreciative of everything that you all.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Ms. Riley?
Don't go anywhere. Oh, you're not off the hook, Gene.
The public service announcement that was made, I know that I've seen it before, but does it air like on Cox and all that?
Yeah, and also, if you can pick it up on Facebook and share it, we would really appreciate that. So I think we can refresh it and get it out there again, too. And if you could, please just send it out on your own social media, and it would help. and anywhere we can get it, email
Yeah.
it, whatever
That would be
whatever
wonderful.
works.
Thank you.
Ms. Renier, Mr. Renier.
Great job. That's a great PSA you guys did. And I'm wondering if it's possible if we could team up with ETV and have that like be the precursor to like the Board of Ed meeting or the precursor to Town Council meeting, and just get more eyes on that because I think it's great. And with the amount of people that watch both meetings, just getting that message out there even more, I think it'd be great if we could team up and get that together.
Awesome idea. And they're listening right now over in ETV. We thank them also
Yeah.
because they were very instrumental too in this whole editing and filming of the whole series and others upcoming.
I
So
believe it does run before town council meetings.
yeah, it's great. So we'll
add it
we'll
into
keep
that.
it, make sure it stays up there. So
Thank you.
Mr. Neville.
The reason why I jumped is a bug fell from down there. And
Oh, that's not good.
So,
Oh, that's not good.
I thought something was really wrong here, yeah.
Everybody thought something was wrong. Literally, a bug fell. Right? A little jarring, but.
It was
go ahead.
waiting for Tom to show
Carry
up here
on.
next
Yes.
week. but-
that's my seat.
Carry on.
Somebody set that up for you, Tom. Listen, I just want to say thank you to all of you. You're giving credit to everybody else, Jane, but those of us that work with you, and Tom and I and Chris, know how much work you've put in and how much leadership you put in. So the things, when we went through tough times 7 years ago dealing with the suicide issue and coming up with a plan that worked and didn't get into blaming everybody, instead of, it talked about really prevention, that was important. And it sounds like the common denominator here that you're talking about now is prevention. Okay, and that's what we need to do. In my mind, we need to see you folks and a committee, whatever that committee is, be the go-to place for people to go to get strategies, to get help, to get directed to where they can get the help if they can't get it locally and stuff like that. We need to make that happen, and I think, you know, the suicide prevention worked well, but, you know, we've gone so far, and I think we made, with your help, we've made some significant changes, but I really think we need to tie in all these prevention things. The opioids has just taken over the whole country. You know, we still have alcohol, we still have, you know, other prescription drugs and so on. It's scary. And so I applaud what you're doing. I urge you to keep going. I'll continue to help you. I know Tom's your right-hand person over there, at least from what I understand. And you know, your coalition is just superbly named and in place at the right time. So whatever we can do to help you, let me know and let us know. We'll be happy to do that. But keep up the good work, all of you.
So actually, Joan is boots on the ground. So I always say this as co-chair, and I'm like, not really. There's the chair. You know, I give my support where I can, and most of that support too is between the boards. So if the Board of Education can continue to work with the council and use our resources, not only on the council side or on the town government side, but resources on the private sector side, and religious side, and anybody we can get together in that whole coalition, that's where the door is open. And it's been, we have our gratitude to staff and the superintendent for allowing these collaborations together to really attack this from every single aisle. So, and it's with your support we do that. So we thank you.
Mr. Rutledge.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, again, as other people have said, thank you for everything, you know, you're doing for this. I think as long as any of us have been in school, you can remember either a stigma being associated with things like depression or mental health, and you can remember, you know, the peer pressure to, you know, have a drink at a party or do, you know, something worse. So anything we can really do to make headway on that is absolutely worth it. And I know you have my support and, you know, the support of people up here. And about that video, if you can like maybe send us a link to our emails. I mean, I know I'll go out there, I'll share that on Facebook and, you know, do whatever you need to get that message out there. So thank you again.
And a quick thank you too to the state of Connecticut and also the federal government for a lot of grants that help the Enfield Together Coalition work through you know, DEMIS and the federal end is
Samson? Well, it's
Sam-
actually out of the
Sam's-
Office of the President of the United States,
Right.
the Office of the National Drug Control Policy. But because of your partnerships and your strong work allowing us to do the student survey, we can be data-driven, we can be research-based. You've made us incredibly eligible to go after huge federal grants, and that's supporting this work. So thank you for all of the ways that you've made this work happen. And thank you.
Yes.
Well, thank you, and thank you for taking the time out tonight to come out and show us the video and everything you do. Just whatever we can do for you, pass it through the superintendent, and we'll make it so.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Number 7, Superintendent reports, Mr. Drezek.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I know I joke a little bit, but I can't tell you how fortunate we are to have a partner. I don't want to put her on the spot, but to have a partner like Jean with us. She's relentless for all the good reasons. There is no better partner than the Enfield Public Schools can have in tackling these issues than Jean and her staff. So thank you again, Jean. I mean it. I'm not just joking this time. And thank you to everyone and Tom and Joan for your participation in this. It's greatly appreciated, so thank you. Moving on, we have our student representative. We have one student representative this evening. One of ours fell ill, so it's on Megan for take.
The floor is yours, Megan.
Yes, I'm riding solo tonight. So, spring sports have started their seasons. I'm not sure if their schedules are out yet and up to date, but they should be coming very soon. Enfield High hosted the Enfield Arts Festival on the 23rd and 24th. I was there on the 23rd, and it was a great turnout. Everyone was enjoying all the art. We have a lot of great artists at the school. The jazz programs attended the Holyoke Community College Jazz Fest, and it was a great experience. They had Jeff Holmes, a very great musician there, and he worked with us a lot, and it was great to just experience all of that. Junior prom is also on Thursday night. A lot of the juniors are very excited for that. Third quarter ends on April 6th, and everyone is very excited for spring break to come.
Thank you. Mr. Drezek.
Thank you. Enfield Head Start STEAM Literature Fair and Family STEAM Night will be held on April 3rd. There's information in your packet and the flyer with additional information about the event. There'll be a joint security presentation between the Enfield Town Council and the Board of Education. It will be held on April 5th in the Enfield High School Auditorium at 7 p.m. Community members are welcome to attend this security presentation. Snow schedule update. I cringe at the thought of having to talk about this again, but I will. Nothing has changed since my last communication with the public. Fortunately, our weather providers were wrong on the last storm. I've never been so happy for someone to give me bad information, but they did. So therefore, we didn't lose any days. So right now, our last day of school is still scheduled for Tuesday, June 26th. And as a reminder to anyone watching that this coming Friday has been switched from a holiday recognizing Good Friday, but that Good Friday will now be recognized for staff members on Monday, April 9th. And as of the moment, unless something happens between now and next Friday, we are not eating into April vacation at this point. I use a big asterisk next to that because I can't control a lot of things, particularly the weather. But right now we are going under the assumption that we're going to maintain April vacation as it stands. If there are any additional changes from that, we'll certainly let parents know. We will send out another notification on Thursday as a reminder to families that there will indeed be school on Friday, but they'll be operating on an alternate early release schedule that was posted with the information we sent out and my letter and message to families. We'll also re-put that out, but that information is out on our website and it's out on our Twitter links and everything else that Guy sends stuff out to. But we will send another where we'll call out for families on Thursday as well. There's listed below, there's some information about March, April events that are in your packet, including on the 31st, the townwide Easter egg hunt on the town green at 1 o'clock. There's a flyer in your packet. And there's two quick things that are on my list that I didn't have an opportunity to put on my superintendent's report. One, I just wanted to recognize and let the board take notice that the Regional Invention Convention was held this past Saturday. And Enfield actually submitted 20 to the statewide competition for the Invention Convention. 15 of our 20 students are all moving on to the next round for the state final round in UConn. So just wanted to give a plug to our STEAM program, our teachers, who have gone above and beyond to try to help their kids with their projects, but more importantly for the students who came up with their inventions. At this point, that concludes the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Mr. Drezek. Number 8, audiences. And a reminder that audiences are 3 minutes, 3 minutes only, and refrain from personalities. I have Shannon as the first one. I'm assuming Shannon Grant, correct?
It's been a long day, and one of those days.
State your name and address for the record.
Shannon Grant, 49 Yale Drive, Enfield. Coming tonight to talk to a little bit about some of the policy language that is up for second review. I guess in summary, I am asking the board to table a few of the policies tonight and take a little bit of a closer look at them. In particular, policy number 1212, 1221, 1321.2a, 1330b, and 1416. And I'll explain a little bit. Hopefully I'll be able to get it all in. The first one, policy 1212, I see that it's an existing policy, and generally the language is fine. The concern is that it says here the volunteers are held to the same standard of conduct as school staff and must observe all policies, which is fine. I don't have a problem with that. But looking at a new policy that's being proposed, policy 1150, which provides that the representatives of school systems should be instructed to place a positive and factual light on all school matters, concerns me a little bit, because there are parents who sometimes express their concerns about the school system, and I'm afraid that maybe as volunteers they will no longer be acceptable as volunteers should that policy be passed. Perhaps they would be declined opportunities to participate in school events or to volunteer if for some reason somebody didn't like what they had to say about the schools, or if they put out information asking for advice and things like that. So I'm asking for that particular policy to be tabled for that reason, just be reconsidered in light of that new policy language that's being proposed. And again, I don't have a problem with the policy 1150. That's a great policy. But it's when you're talking about volunteers and parents and people who otherwise wouldn't necessarily be held to that standard. The next policy is 1221, which is the Citizens Advisory Committee for the Board of Education. My concern here is that committees shall be appointed by the chairman of the board, which is fine. However, it really doesn't go into enough detail, in my opinion. There have been issues with the town council appointing folks that are of a different political viewpoint of the majority of the town council, and I'd really hate for that to be an issue here. Education is not supposed to be political. I know it is because it involves money, but it's not supposed to be. So I would suggest that you take a look at perhaps Glastonbury's 1221 membership qualifications and consider some of the qualifications that they outline in their policy and incorporate it into our language. The next is policy 1321-2A, which is the videotaping. We have the language revision that was posted. Thank you very much, Rich, for doing that and pointing me to the new language. And I had been emailing with Rich and with Mr. Longy and the policy committee. My suggestion is that that paragraph that has been revised or is being proposed to be revised go a little bit further. My revision says the Board of Education recognizes a parent's guardian's right to record a PPT meeting or a transition conference held pursuant to the Individuals with Disabilities Act or 504 committee meetings pursuant to 504 rehabilitation. And the reason for the two additions of transition conference and 504 committee meetings is because they are not PPT meetings. 504 plans don't have PPT meetings. They have 504 committee meetings. And there is the transition conference from the birth to 3 into the school system, which also is not a PPT meeting. In my opinion, the correct the language that you have doesn't go quite far enough. And I'd like to see it revised just a little bit further. Trying to speak quickly for you. The school use and of town facilities is another. And I just want to, I'm sorry, 1330B. I just want to point out, and perhaps it could be incorporated into your policy language, the state statute 1022A provides that notwithstanding the provisions of Chapter 106 or any municipal charter, whenever any outside group or individual makes a payment for custodial costs for the use of school facilities or otherwise for the use of school facilities, an amount equal to the amount paid or received, net any costs of the fiscal authority having budgetary responsibility or charged, and I'm going to go for it, shall be deemed to be appropriated to the Board of Education in addition to the funds appropriated by the town. So basically, what this is saying, if someone were to rent a school facility, that money should go directly to the Board of Education. And I'm not sure that that's happening. If it is, then kudos. But I'm not seeing it in the budget, and it should be.
I'll give you one more minute.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. I have two. I think I missed my 1416 here. No, it's not 1416. It's 1260. And this pertains to the educational foundations, which, as you know, it's 1260 pertaining to education foundations. As you know, we have an education foundation here in Enfield, which I co-founded in 2009. There is a new policy that's being proposed to address the education foundations. That policy lacks a paragraph that some other towns include in their language, and the reason for that paragraph is because education foundations, when they are founded, are specifically founded to not supplement the Board of Education's funding from the public. The paragraph that should be included is the last paragraph of Lebanon's Policy 1260, and I'm not going to read it because I don't have time, but that paragraph should be added into the Enfield proposed language, because if it is not, there's a possibility that the language could be perceived by outside entities that we are funding Board of Education related school maintenance type funds. And we don't advertise that way. We should not fund school facilities, and it would be better if that language was included in the policy. And the last is 1330B, which has, am I right? No, I'm wrong. It is not. 1416, excuse me, fiscal authority. And I'm just asking that the board review that first paragraph a little bit because it has some unusual language, and perhaps take a look at some of the other towns that have a little bit different language to tweak it. It's hard for me to understand how it's written, so just take a look at it. I'm not going to read it because I don't want to do that. So, again, if you wouldn't mind, when you go to review the second reading of the 100 series tonight, if you wouldn't mind taking those policies off the table before voting and approving, and just taking a quick look at what I've put forth. And I can put this all in an email to the board as well to make it maybe a little bit easier for you, because there's been a lot of information and a lot of language. So thank you very much.
Please forward us an email of that, and we'll forward it and add them to in the email also.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And the next one's Susan, and I'm going to not say the last name because I won't do it justice, and I'm sorry.
That's okay. I'll say it for you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Sue Fluckinger for 15 Summers Road, Enfield, Connecticut. And first of all, I want to apologize because I lost part of my paperwork, so I'm going to try to do this from memory. And it is in regard to policy number 1321, point 2A, I believe, like the other Sue had mentioned. And regarding, I have not seen the revisions. I know, like, she had mentioned that there were some revisions that you had done in regards to, I guess, that there were some oppositions regarding the audio taping of the parents at the IEP meetings and the Section 504 meetings. And as I'm sure you know, that the districts that chose to go against parents of doing that when they were taken to court had lost because that was it was found in violation of the parents' rights to do so, and those were the last year. It was found very not user-friendly to the parents. I'm also a state certified advocate. Don't practice. I'm at home with my son that needs my tender. But also, I had also noticed that in there was no findings regarding covering any of GPS tracking systems. As you know, children are GPS tracked all the time. And it's something that we really want. Children, especially a lot of special needs children, they are runners from all kinds of ages, especially children with very low cognitive abilities. My concern is that it may be misconstrued sometimes by administrators in an inaccurate way. And I want it to be understood that, and it should be written that the GPS tracking system is owned by the individual, which would be the parent, and it is not something that Enfield would be privy to, or that could be used against, say, a pair or something. It's a useful tool to know where the child is, and you could ask the parent for that information. But it's something that has happened in the past and has been used in a negative way against an employee of your system. So I think that that's something that I would like to see in the wording so that we could be ahead of the game and see used in the wording of that policy as well. Okay? All right.
Thank you. Anyone else? Anyone else? Mr. T-Katz, 3 minutes.
5 on the council.
Well,
Unless
this
you can
is-
come back a
this
second
is-
time.
This is the board, and there's no second time. Name and address.
Board members get a second time. Bob T. Katz, 815 Woodgate Circle. My concern is about the high school. The town of Enfield, the Board of Education, the council is opening themselves to a class action lawsuit of what's going on at the high school. The superintendent should take care of the problem. It's the lighting issue. The people on Riverdale are going to bring a lawsuit against the town for the lights. The building is lit up like a Christmas tree, especially third shift workers that are cleaning the building. Every building in town is done in the second shift. I don't see what the privilege of the janitors get to work third shift. The school is not used that much at night. I've had that school under surveillance since the March 1st Planning and Zoning meeting, which the engineer gave his presentation about the light issue. It's actually brighter at night from midnight on than this room. And the people can't sleep on Riverdale. They have a legitimate issue. It hasn't been taken care of. You could put opaque glass in to take care of the lighting issue. but nobody has moved anything. There are lights that burn during the day 24/7. In fact, one of them just burned out the other day. So somebody's got to take the leadership, and nobody has yet, not even the town manager, not even the chairman of the Board of Education or the superintendent. There's got to be some action taken, or we're opening ourselves up. You won't have a budget next year if they sue. The other thing is that everybody's talking about the stoplight out on Enfield Street. 1964, you had a presentation of 4,000 people at the school, the opening of Enfield High. The early years, you had 3,000 students going to that school, double shifts. There was so much traffic, there was never a problem. The fire department analyzed it. They said you don't need a stoplight. The police department said you don't need a stoplight, but they put a left-hand turning lane. The state said you don't need a stoplight. So continuous of trying to spend that, and I think it's about $700,000 to put a stoplight in there, and it's never been needed. There's never been an incident. The only incidents that I heard is a couple of kids, they want to slide down the hill, and went through one of their cars went through the front door in the early 60s, or the late 60s. There should be barriers put up. The hospitals are putting up barriers in front of their doors. There should be barriers at every entrance of the school, so people can't drive in to get access to the school so they can gain entrance to do some bad things. So we should take that action immediately. The hospitals across the state are doing it because of the emergency room. So there should be some action, and I think the board should get involved, seriously. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Anyone else? I call public communication closed. Board member comments. Ms. Riley, you want to start?
Okay, let's see here. There was a lot going on, so let's see here. Where do I want to start? At the beginning of March, I got to go to Read Across America, and I got to read at Enfield Street School to 2 classes. That was really fun. The kids were very receptive, and it was a great day. Let's see here. First readers had their second ceremony of the year, and I believe there were over 70 new readers certified, and we had Captain Hall and Sergeant, I can't remember his name, Sergeant Parent, Keith Parent. Yes, and they were wonderful. The kids were very receptive to them too. It was great. Let's see what else is next. Oh, I got to, I know that everybody got an email, and I was interested in watching it for myself, but I got to go and watch the grant scoring of Effie not 2 Mondays ago. There was 6 grants or 7 applications, and it was the teachers who wrote them. It was phenomenal. They did a great job. I was not prepared to talk first.
Your name's on the list.
Yeah. So, no, but they did a great job, and the scoring is very fair, and all of the grants basically got something, and I was very impressed. And I got to go with Elizabeth Windsor Post last Friday to Prunes Crandall to deliver a couple of the grants to the teachers that were there, and their eyes lit up when they found out that they were getting the grant, and they're doing some really amazing stuff with these grants that Effie raises money for. So it's an awesome organization, and you ladies are right here, so keep up the awesome work. It's great. And then last Saturday was the vendor fair at Henry Barnard, so I was there all day with the Cub Scouts. We were selling popcorn, but there was a lot of people there, a lot of vendors. It was great. The ladies on the PTO worked really hard to make it a successful event. So if they do it again next year, I would encourage everybody to come. It was a good time. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Ms. Riley. Mr. Rutledge.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I just wanted to thank Principal Clark at the high school for sending me a reminder. Their Parents Advisory Council is meeting tomorrow night at 6:30 p.m. in the Enfield High School Library, so I'm looking forward to attending that. I'd also like to offer some congratulations to both of our high school basketball teams. Both the girls and boys team both had some outstanding seasons and unfortunately some heartbreaking losses in the semifinals there. I think the boys lost in the last second of the game by 1 point to Avon and the girls went to overtime. But we did have a few standouts in that tournament, especially I think saw one of our students was named to first team All-State. He was averaging 28 points a game, so to that family, congratulations. That's a lot of hard work there, and you guys deserve all your accolades for that. About some two other topics. The first about some of the recent snow days, and Mr. Drezek, thank you for your information on that earlier. I had seen a number of comments online about parents expressing concern and the impact of the snow days on the school year and things like that. And, you know, and I've said it before, I know I grew up in an area where we sometimes close school for seems like it would have been back then like snowball fight at the bus stop day or something like that. Pardon me. But I just want everybody to keep in mind, you know, when our superintendent decides to, makes the decision to close school, it's done really with one single concern in mind, and that's safety. None of us have a crystal ball. We have to rely on what the weatherman says in the morning, and albeit sometimes they, they predict 12 inches of snow and we see a dusting on the ground, but unfortunately we don't have a lot of control over that. So I know it's tough decisions, and I know sometimes it's, you're not happy about making the decision, but I do applaud the fact that you always think of the student safety in making those decisions. And I would just like to ask the community to be aware of that as well. And finally, on another matter relating to safety, over the last month or so, we've all had a lot of conversations about the shootings that have happened, particularly down in Parkman, Florida. I'd like to especially thank our State Representative Carol Hall for spearheading a school safety and security committee at the state level, and I look forward to seeing what comes out of that. I also attended that March for Our Lives event this past weekend, and there was definitely a lot of good information, I think, that came of that. I think it was great to see the community come together for something like that. I could say a lot there, but I'm going to limit my comments to one particular thing that really struck me on that, and that was a very articulate young lady described what seems to happen with these tragedies. Paraphrase, she said that a tragedy happens, we offer our thoughts and prayers, we do a lot of talking, and then things seem to die down until something else happens. And, honestly, yeah, that does seem like that's what happens too often, and frankly, that's the cycle that needs to stop. Two quotes kind of stick in my head at a time like this. One is that quote about taking the path less traveled, and another one by Socrates talks about the unexamined life. These in concert with one another, I take them to mean that we not only need to challenge our preconceptions, but we also have to try and get to the root cause and not necessarily just take the easy path. It's some things that are easy. It's easy to say that a particular kind of weapon should be banned, and it's just as easy to just trumpet the Second Amendment. It's easy to hold a sign saying that a gun is easier to get than an over-the-counter medication. It's just as easy to dismiss these arguments by saying the people making them like to ingest, laundry detergent encoded in water-soluble cellophane wrappers. But that doesn't really get us anywhere. Talking like that is just nothing more than rhetoric. What we really need to be doing is we need to start looking at the heart of these issues. Stuff like, the Enfield Together Coalition is trying to do. Look at substance abuse. Look at the mental health issues, the issues that are truly at the heart of this matter. Going back and forth on Facebook or in social media, frankly, that's not going to do a whole lot. What we really need people doing are sitting down, having open-minded, intelligent conversations to really look at what is the cause of all this, and try and really address the issues that are going to tackle the hate that is in some people's heart that commit these evil acts. And maybe if we're able to do that, then maybe we do make a dent in the violence and our students can feel safer and we can move forward. But the thing I'd like to close with is just that we need to stop the rhetoric. We actually really need to look at the root cause and start making some strides there. Thank you very much.
Mr. Poe?
So I just want to reiterate my congratulations to everyone who was recognized today. Our student representatives, our student musicians, our lamplighters, our students from the Lamplighters, ETC, the folks getting the grants, and Shannon and your folks for everything that you just accomplished in your most recent grant cycle for Effie. I think that's all really wonderful work, and definitely deserving of infinite congratulations to all of those people involved. I just wanted to express my appreciation as well for the conversations that we've been having regarding policy that have been coming up lately. I think this is a wonderful example of how we can work together with our community and how we can have productive conversations regarding whether or not what we're doing and what we're proposing is appropriate, evaluating our sources for the information that we are getting our guidance from, and really just kind of stepping back and remembering that while we're all volunteers and we do the best we can to educate ourselves, but sometimes we need extra eyes and sometimes we need to ask the right questions of the organizations that we count on to guide us. So my appreciation for that respectful discourse is huge. It's very much appreciated. And you're right, Shannon, it's not supposed to be political. And I know in my heart, I don't believe it is. This is not an us versus them kind of thing for me. So I'm really looking forward to us working together and going through some of these issues that you and others have brought up so courteously. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Mr. Renier.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First and foremost, I want to thank all the schools for all of the wonderful gifts that they gave us in appreciation to the Board Appreciation Month. I see a lot of great things here, and I can't wait to read the little thing on my
so cute.
happy mailbox here. So kudos to all the kids. Thank you very much for reaching out to us and providing us with these gifts. Secondly, to all the guests that came out this evening, thank you. Great accomplishments in the music and the arts, and it's good to have them recognized here as well. Shannon, thank you so much for coming out and the interactions we've been having. More to that when we touch upon item 10. The Arts Festival was past weekend. It was a great success in the as it always is, and it was great walking around seeing the art that all of the kids in Enfield were able to create. So that was great. In regards to my PTO school, Hazardville Memorial, I just wanted to say our last PTO meeting we had a guest speaker, Steve Davis, who gave a great presentation in regards to light. He's going to Goodwin College for ophthalmology, and he kind of shed some light onto our understanding about the blue lights and how it affects the children. Anything from tablets to TVs and how it's actually affecting the kids and making their eyes worse. So it was a great presentation. Maybe we can make that a more global thing for the town because the information that he shared, it was short, but it was very informative. On April 20th, there's a spirit assembly happening at Hazardville. And most importantly, there's March Madness going on at Hazardville Memorial. March Madness is a fundraiser that they're holding where every day in the month of March, you have a chance, you donate $5 to the PTO and you get entered into a chance of winning a great prize. We have 3 days left, and out of those 3 days, there's 2 great prizes. Wednesday, there's a 4-pack Yard Goats. Thursday, there's a Yankee 4-pack ticket, not so much. And then on Friday, there's a Red Sox tickets. So if you go to Hazardville Memorial School PTO, HazardvilleMemorialSchoolPTO.org, you can enter in. You can go through PayPal. It's a $5 donation to the PTO, and it gets you entered into the raffle. And if you're lucky enough to win the Yard Goats, you can also win the Red Sox tickets later on. If you do happen to win the Yankees tickets, I'm sure Scott will refund your money if that's possible. In regards to the policy, again, I will mention that further when we bring up item 10. That's it, Mr. Chair.
Any Yankee fans out there? It's Mr. Rich Renier.
We could gift them to Mr. Drezik, yeah.
Yes, Mr. Dresser.
We save our jokes for October.
Let's move on. Who wants to start on this side?
I can start.
Ms. LeBlanc.
Okay, just a few things I'd like to say. So over the years, we've had a few Board of Ed appreciation, and every time it just touches me because the students and the teachers, they're the rock stars. We're not at all. But I still have letters. I still have my Head Start flower pot, my Enfield High lanyard, my JFK keychain. I have saved it all. And I actually put my flower pot on my bench over the weekend from Head Start. So it really, I want everybody to know what you do really does touch us deeply. So we really appreciate that. Like I had said earlier, I was at the MICA event for JFK, and I was astounded. It was a wonderful event to watch. It was Saturday at Belchertown High School. A lot of great musicians. Each school had their own style. Some schools showed up and they wore tuxes and were very fancy. JFK, they show up in all black and with colored bow ties. So it was great to see. So now we're just waiting to find out where they're going, Boston Symphony or Worcester. So that's exciting. I attended the FE meet and greet. And I saw Shannon, and I saw a kindergarten teacher from Henry Barnard. She was wonderful, talking about her grant process and some of the stuff that they've gotten through the grants. And she kind of partners up with another kindergarten teacher, and it's wonderful. And the people in FE are so passionate about everything that they do. So I told you guys, I'll support you in any way that I can. I went to the JFK students versus teachers game. The students did win. Our resident DJ was there. Yeah, it was a very close game, but it was a great game. They've really evolved that into an evening event, and the kids have a lot of fun, and it seemed very well attended. The cheerleaders were there, did a halftime show. Just a note about the junior prom. That there's going to be school on Friday, that, right, juniors don't have to go to school if they go to the prom? No, I'm just kidding. I have somebody going to the junior prom. And I took Thursday off, although I don't have anybody to get hair and nails to watch to get done, so I'm available. I just have a boy that has to get a tux on, so I don't know why. But I'd also like to take a minute and thank the policy committee because we've had a lot of questions and about policies lately, and I really appreciate you guys keeping an open dialogue, not only with the people that are emailing us or asking questions, but also with the rest of the board and keeping us informed. Shannon and I didn't catch your last name, so Sue, I think that I really appreciate. It's a lot easier. Okay. I really. No. I really appreciate you.
Very long life with special ed.
That's okay. I appreciate you both coming tonight, and I appreciate all the emails that we got, and I'm hoping to be able to clear up anything. One good thing is that we have an awesome policy committee that's very good with communications, with not only you, but with the board and with Andy Longy. So, and then I just want to thank the Enfield Together Coalition. I mean, they're here and what they do, and the fact that they want to grow that in such a time of need for the town of Enfield is huge for us. So I really thank all their efforts, and I think that's all I have. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. LeBlanc. Ms. Hernandez.
All right. So I want to also echo what Tina said, but thank you for everybody who came out and spoke with us tonight. Really appreciate the collaborative spirit when we are creating policies to support students and the families. But I do, Scott and Rich and Chris and Andy, I do appreciate your transparency. Sometimes I have a tendency to ask a question like 4 times in a row, but my tone is a little different each time, and so I appreciate you sitting with me and making sure that I understand what it is that you're saying to me. That means a lot because you're taking a lot of time out of your day, and I appreciate that. I wish I had remembered to bring a picture and maybe put it up, but I was able to deliver our note to Parkland, and I was able to deliver the rocks from Enfield Rocks to Parkland. Thank you again to the artists. It was profound, it was moving, and I echo what Chris said. I just appreciate the conversations that we're engaging in. I appreciate, and I'll share just a really quick story. So my daughter participated in the walk-in at Enfield High, and she walked out with, walked in but walked out with such a really good pathway forward. And she actually doesn't agree with me, and that's okay because she can articulate why. She has her own thoughts, and she has her own advocacy, and she has her own steps moving forward. And while we do agree on a lot of things, she's offering a different perspective to me, and that's what this whole thing was about. She really picked up on What's Your 17, and that's been really key for her and her friends. So thank you for including those things. It was a really powerful experience, I think, for many of the students that were involved. And then one brief shout out, I have not had the pleasure of meeting her, but her name is Carrie Manafort. What is that? Montefort. What a bright star in Enfield. She's been phenomenal at really updating parents at Enfield High when, you know, scholarships are due, really kind of keeping people engaged, and I really appreciate that because this is a pretty hectic time for a lot of people, and just somebody who is optimistic and just so cheerful, and she draws you in. And so I want to just take a moment and say I appreciate her. I don't have a student looking for scholarships or looking for some of the things that she's talking about, but it's just a delight to have her. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hernandez. Mr. Neville.
A couple of short things. The one, Mr. Tikatz, I watched the meeting on TV as well for the lights, and certainly it's something that needs to be addressed. And in fact, we've also talked about it at the Enfield High Building Committee, and a lot of things have been done in the short term to deal with it. In fact, the solutions is in place already. They already put the timers in there and stuff like that to work. If the issue needs to be signed off, it's not within the school board's prerogative to do it. I think it's all been agreed. It went to planning and zoning, and I think it's certainly within the planning and zoning group to get the sign-offs from the appropriate people. The solution's already been there. It's the same solution they've used in hundreds of schools. The architect spoke, the engineer spoke, and so on. It's not a big deal, and the state's approved it in hundreds of buildings. So we're just looking for them to follow through on the process, get it signed off, and just put it in place. You're absolutely right. It's an issue that has to be addressed. It's shouts at you, but it's I think the solution is in place as long as they get the sign-offs. And I think the town manager has stepped in on that to try to push that along. In terms of the policies, Shannon, thank you very, very much. I think it's a sign that the process works. The reason we have 2 readings is so that, and we publish it and we put it out, that we want people to respond to us. I hope you get copies, your notes and stuff like that, to the committee. I think the committee's done a wonderful job, and I think people writing to us about the issues that they have, it makes the process work even better. We need all of us to work on it, not just us. You have some insights that we need to hear. In terms of the people here, the grants and the music people, I mean, that's the gravy in our life, that we see that kind of stuff, the drama. It's just, our kids are so wonderful, and we don't talk about it enough. We have wonderful kids, we have wonderful parents and teachers, and that's why we ran. We didn't run just to debate one thing or another. We ran because we want to make it better for the kids here. Finally, I'm an old guy here. I've been around for a long time when we've been having these issues with the shootings and things like that. It strikes me. I've been around for almost 20 years while that's been going on. This particular thing just struck me in a way that I just felt I needed to respond in some way. So my final comments are that basically this past Saturday, along with Board of Ed and Town Council members, I had the privilege to walk with Enfield students and families in Enfield's March for Our Lives. My thanks go out to all the students, the parents, and citizens who organized the march. Like all of you, I felt tremendous pride in hearing our students articulately speak about the issues and shout out enough. It's funny how our kids can identify the problem right away without having their vision clouded by ideology, politics, or the lack of the will to act. I'm so proud of our students, especially their will to act. They look at life through the eyes of idealism that we all had when we were young. They don't believe that they can't change things by their action and their vote just because people say they can't. Enough is enough, they shout, and they're right. We want to keep our kids safe too. We should join them. After almost 20 years, enough is enough. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Neville. Mr. Ryder.
To reiterate something that Superintendent Drezek brought up earlier, as a reminder, there is the Enfield 5th Annual Egg Hunt on the Town Green. It is a completely free event to any students 5th grade and under. The Town Green opens up at noon, and the egg heats are at 1, 1:15, 1:30, and 1:45, separated by different age groups. I also had the pleasure of meeting Dr. Goodnight last Saturday for the first time. I'd seen her in different forums, but we actually got a chance to chat, and I thanked her, and I got my Enfield public school music shirt on, picked a good week to wear it with the grant that we won, and I went to the chorus concert Saturday, March 17th, where my daughter, who's now in 4th grade at Eli Whitney, performed for the first time in a chorus concert. So that was great to see that. And the kids did amazing. It was students from 4th grade straight through high school, and it blew us away. My wife and I were both impressed. And I wanted to thank the Enfield Public Schools and the Enfield Public Schools Music Department and staff, and thank Mr. Patterson, who came out of retirement to play piano for us on Saturday. I always love seeing Mr. Patterson. The Invention Convention that you mentioned, it's like Dr. Seuss. 15 students did move on, and one of them is a very good friend of ours. Their family was the first family that we met in Enfield. We moved here 6 years ago because our children all went to the same daycare. So I just wanted to wish Madison G. good luck at UConn. From there, they either move on to Michigan or Washington, D.C., and she doesn't know anything about Michigan, so she's hoping to move on to Washington, D.C. So good luck, Madison, and hope to see you down in D.C. And if I get that commercial from the Enfield Coalition, I'll make sure that we all get that out. And I would also like to include it on the PTO sites with the groups that I work with. I personally want to thank Shannon Grant for speaking with me, giving me a phone call, explaining that there was, one or two concerns with certain wording. I feel the policy was appropriate as written, appropriate as first drafted, but I also recognize that tweaks were needed. And we've made them, and I'll just let Rich take over from there. I'll take his lead on that. And then as far as the Read Across America, I got to read at a classroom at Head Start, which turned into playtime. We ended up hanging out with the kids until they all got picked up because it was a snow day and they all got picked up early. But then from there I went to Eli Whitney and I read in 2 different classrooms at Eli Whitney. So since those kids can read and read very well, for them it was just more of the entertaining conjecture I put into the Dr. Seuss books and really acting it out like my theater friends. So I was like, I know you guys already know how to read, so I'm just here to entertain. We all talked about our pets, life in general, good stuff. So thank you to Eli Whitney and to Head Start for having the funny guy in town pop over and read to you. So thank you.
Well, like every time this comes to me that my board speaks for me. Everything I had was said, so I'm not going to sit here and reiterate. I am trying to get a Buzz Robotics update, and I haven't got one. I didn't know where they placed this past weekend at Bryant College, and no one's texted me. So if you're out there, thank you for letting me not know. But I do know that they do have events at Hartford Public on April 7th and April 8th. And then they move on to, if they qualify, I believe, but I'm not sure. Boston University is April 12th, 13th, and 14th. And then the national competitions in Houston, Texas on 19, 20, and 21. So congratulations to those guys. I know they worked hard on the robot this year. I did see some videos on that. So, and they had their pasta supper there a couple of weeks ago, too. That was a great turnout for that. So thank you for all your support on that. Just want to reiterate, we do have that security meeting, joint security meeting on April 5th at 7 p.m. in Enfield High Auditorium. We will try to speak with anyone that comes on what we are doing for the schools. I mean, we're not going to come out and tell you exactly what we're doing because that's not, it's like a football game. You don't give the other team the playbook. So, but we will do our best to bring everyone up to speed that we are working on security. Security is a #1 issue in the schools, and we are. We'll bring whatever we can to that meeting, and yes, Mr. T-Cat's back to the school. 14 months we've been waiting for a final CO from the building department. This is all in the hands of the building department, and I'm going to say it publicly. We put in the sensors, we put in this, but they're the ones delaying the lights and delaying the lighting in that school. But we did put in the sensors. We put in for the lights to go off at night. So, and that's why we went to that meeting on the 1st of March, and we finally got Planning and Zoning to sign off on it with a little help from Commissioner Nelson. That took the ball and ran with it. So it is in the town managers and in the building departments now to get the final CO 14 months later. So with that, we'll continue with unfinished business. 10A, policy revision, approval of 1000 series, second reading. Mr. Renier.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you so much. So first, before we go into the policy itself, I just wanted to make a couple notes in regards to the policy itself. So the Board of Ed has a policy that says that anytime a new policy comes forth that it is discussed in policy, agreed in the policy subcommittee, from that committee it gets put on to the first reading to the Board of Ed. Then it gets put out to the public for the public to view it as well. So all of our stakeholders have an opportunity to view any changes or ask for any corrections. From the first reading, it goes to our next meeting, and then we have the second reading with any community input, any board input, anyone's input that they want. That's the way of the life, and that's the process that this current policy took, and this is why we have very creative and very important discussions in regards to changes and revisions. With that said, the process started about 1.5 years ago when CABE took our entire series of all of our policies, brought them back to CABE, and updated them either for legal language, for policy language, for new state statute language, and they send us series at a time. Case in point, tonight I just received the 3000 series, so that's the next one on the block. So when we get these policies approved by CABE, CABE has a special department that completes all the revisions of the policies. They have a legal department, they run it by there. So it is my belief and my understanding that getting this information from a credible agency such as CABE, who runs it through all these things, when they provide it to us, it's just a matter of fact of looking at it, seeing if it fits in our district, hoping that everything that they've provided us is legal, because obviously, again, we're all volunteers, and we don't have 80 hours a week to go through the legal jargon. That's why we pay CABE, and that's why we get CABE support to help us with these. With that said, the 1000 series went through that entire process and came back, and there were concerns in regards to policy 1321.20 and the specific wording on it. Now, when that was brought to the attention of several board members and myself, I first want to thank all the individuals who either emailed me, called me, or contacted me. I want to thank them for bringing that to my attention. I know there are also a lot of chatter in the social media world in regards to us trying to hoodwink someone, or if you have an issue with a policy, you call the policy committee, you call the Board of Ed. If you vent all your frustration on a social media platform where no one can see it, it's not really doing any justice to the school district or to the kids in which it serves. We're not all professionals. We do make mistakes, and we take that very kindly when someone calls us, because it shows us that there is some improvement that needs to be made. So when those individuals contact us, we're able to reach back out to CABE, which we did, and found out that, oh, CABE made a mistake. And they, in turn, issued a memo to all the other schools saying, listen, look at this policy that you guys have, because the wording is wrong. the wording should be read like this. So because we have such active stakeholders in our community, we were able not just to affect change in Enfield, but the entire state of Connecticut for that direct policy. So that's the backstory on policy number 1321.2. Now, this evening, Ms. Grant came forward and presented a lot of great information in regards to several other policies. So with that being said, Mr. Chairman, I know tonight we were supposed to do a second reading, but I would like to table item A in section 10 till our next meeting, this giving time for the policy committee to not only review the policy aforementioned, but also the additional policies also mentioned this evening by Ms. Grant, and also extend an invitation, if Mr. Longy could do this as well, extend an invitation to Ms. Grant to come with us through the next policy meeting, which will be Tuesday night. We're all going to have it to address just strictly these this policy and go over the said changes, corrections, and look to see if we can make this thing solid and beneficial for the entire district. So that.
Motion by Mr. Renier, seconded by Mr. Rutledge. Discussion, we have some information to be read by our secretary.
Yes, due to numerous communication via email, there were a few people that wanted an email read for the record regarding the policy that Rich just spoke about,
1321.
Yeah. They were concerned that there was missing information about the recordings of PPT meetings. So we had emails from Ms. Jones, Ms. Navarro-Gilmore. Those are I got many emails, but those were specifically the two that had asked that email be read into the minutes of the board meeting. We've got your email. We're going to have it in the minutes to the meeting. And we thank you as a board for responding and communicating with us.
Thank you, Ms. LeBlanc. Mr. Ryder.
For the benefit of those watching, Rich, could you explain an acronym CABE?
Yes, Connecticut Association of Board of Educations, which is the private company that runs most of the Board of Educations here in the state of Connecticut, oversees them, the policies, the regulations, how the school district is run. So they are the governing board, more or less, for Board of Educations.
So, Mr. Neville.
If I could just throw two things out in response to the question. I'd never really heard the issue that Sue brought up about the GPS. I'd never even thought of that, although I know it's been used in the past. I think that'd be a good question to research with CABE, because I can think of some pros and cons of that need to be addressed in writing. I think the second one I think that came up in terms of Shannon's comments had to do with the money. We lend the building out to, or lease the building, not lease, rent it out to different groups in town. We've done that for decades. And the town, what that money goes to pay for is custodian fees, use of the facilities and so on, which is the town property. Unless I'm wrong, and Chris can correct me if I'm wrong, the money can't go back to the school folks, to the Board of Ed. I think it goes into the budget to take care of their budget, because they're paying the checks out to the people and the cost of using the facility. And that money goes in basically to repay them for the cost that they're expending. So just to respond to her question there, I think you guys probably already know that, but I think it's I just thought you deserved that response tonight. Thank you.
And just to reiterate, the procedure works. There's a first reading. Right. We put it out in the public. The public comes back to us, and to come back to us again, like he said, social media doesn't do anybody any good. Just bring it back to us. We're considering it, and now we're tabling it to reconsider it even further. So, one more thing, Mr. Neville.
We actually welcome the feedback, as you can tell from your comments tonight. Yes. I think the committee works very, very hard. Rich, I thought you did a great job of clarifying that quickly. You got it right out there to people, and as quickly as you could. I think we've all said, we all work pretty well together, I think, as a group. It takes all of us to make it work. And I think when we have a process that invites participation and people participate and get in touch with us, that's why our email addresses are up there. That's why we have phone numbers listed. Call us. We welcome it. So thank you very much, Rich.
Ms. Riley.
I have a question for you, Rich, for the policy committee. When we have large looming policies like that stack you have over there, do you think it would be possible to maybe split it in half? So maybe we do, because I mean, that's a lot of reading when we have, everybody's got other committees going on and stuff. And
No,
places to go.
it is a lot of reading.
Yeah. Like, can we like do,
But
I mean, I don't know.
No, it is a lot, and here's a task that we're stuck with, is that we have all the policies to do, and it's probably not even going to get done within the 2 years of our term.
That's true.
If we stick to what we have now. So the concern is, are we sitting on policies that are outdated? Are we sitting on policies that aren't up to date with law? Are we sitting on policies that aren't up to state statute? That's the concern.
Yep.
So I understand that the volume is large. I mean, the three of us go
I
through,
know.
and you were sitting on
Yeah,
at
it's a lot of
1.2.
work for you guys,
I mean,
too.
it's a lot of reading to go through. Do I want to do half? Sure. I mean, we can do half. But again, the concern is, are we sitting on a policy that needs to be updated that we're not doing, and then found in compliance of a policy that's not up to date with the law? I know these 3,000 series, this can get broken up because this has to do with like vending machines. So I'm okay with breaking this one up. That's completely fine. But I guess going forward, we can definitely, because CAVE hasn't updated 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So they still have 5 more series to go through.
Right.
So we can definitely reach out to our CAVE partners and ask them to prioritize the important ones first, so we don't have to, go sequential. We don't have to do that. So we can skip, 3 or skip 4, whatever it needs to be to get that done. But I know it is a large thing. And it's a big task. But unfortunately, that's what we ask them to do, is give it back to us. But it's definitely something we can break up if we're able to.
Okay, thank you.
And again, thank the three of you, plus
Yeah.
Assistant Superintendent Longy for
It's
all
not
your-
an easy task,
all
but you
your
guys
hard
do,
work.
for sure.
And Mr. Chair, I'd just like to make mention, too, that the policy meetings are open to the public. They are held at central office. So our next one is Tuesday at 6 o'clock. So anyone is welcome to attend that. It is open to the public. And our agenda will be reviewing the current updates at this point.
Seeing no other discussion, Kathy, roll call or hand vote? To table it? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Riley? This
Yes.
is to table.
Yes, to table.
1,000
Yes, table.
series. Mrs. Riley?
Yes.
Mrs. LeBlanc?
Yes.
Mrs. Hernandez?
Yes.
Mr. Neville?
Yes.
Mr. Ryder?
Yes.
Mr. Renier?
Yes.
Mrs. DePoe?
Yes.
Mr. Rutledge?
Yes.
Chairman Krizel?
Yes.
Motion to table passes.
Thank you. All right, number 11, new business. Action, if any, regarding revised JFK ed specifications. Mr. Drezek, and I believe we have Mr., I could never say your name.
Cycli. Like Ronnie.
Why can't I never say that name?
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. The board has previously approved the educational specifications for JFK Middle School on June 13, 2017. Since the referendum was unsuccessful, the Joint Facilities Committee has been working diligently on the revised JFK ed specs. The facility committee members, Mr. Krizel, Mr. Neville, and Mr. Cycli, are available to discuss the revised JFK ed specs with the board, and therefore, after reviewing that, you may take any action deemed appropriate regarding the approved and revised JFK educational specifications as presented.
And just to add, Ms. Riley and Mr. Ryder are also on that committee, just so we don't, well, he said both of us, he didn't say to both of you, and I don't want the fingers
Thank
at
you.
me, I want the fingers at you. So we just want to clarify, there's 4 of us on that committee.
Yes, there are. Thank you.
So, Chris, would you like to just give us a brief rundown? I mean, I don't believe anything changed in the only changes was in the square footage, correct?
Sure, yes. So I apologize, as I was handing these out, I missed a little bit of what Chris had
And we
mentioned
all
earlier.
miss what Chris says, don't worry about it.
So we did meet a few times we spoke regarding programming size only. Those were the changes that were made. The intent of these meetings was to reduce the square footage of the building. In turn, will hopefully reduce the overall cost of the project. So we reduced the project about 10,000 square feet, and that's programmatic space. So some of there were some specialized spaces that were removed. They were condensed. Andy went back and spoke to a few of the department heads, and just really about the way their programs are running currently and how they see them in the future. Made some changes there, made some consolidations, some shared storage areas, some shared office spaces, some not shared office spaces. And again, we were able to achieve about 10,000 square feet based on the ed specs that were approved last May for the previous grant application that was submitted last June. Again, the intent of these educational specifications is to review them, discuss them, approve them tonight. Thursday evening, the Joint Facilities Committee, acting as the building committee for the JFK pre-referendum, will be interviewing 3 architects. The selection was, the interview selection was decided on Saturday morning after that very same committee deliberated on the 7 proposals that were received. There's 3 interviews Thursday night. The intent after Thursday night is to select an architect, and then essentially this time next week, we'll turn over to them these revised, updated, and tonight approved, I hope, ed specs, as well as any of the other information that was generated out of last summer's application process, be it any drawings, any existing building information, all the study information, all the programming, everything that was generated as a deliverable up through last June will be turned over to the new architect to begin an aggressive 10 to 12 week cycle to generate a new grant application, essentially to be submitted by June 30th of this year, to be reviewed by the school construction grants.
I couldn't have said it better.
Thank you.
So I need a motion to approve the revised JFK education specs. So moved by Mr. Neville, seconded by Ms. Riley. Now any discussion on the ed specs? Mr. Rutledge.
Good evening, Chris. Just a question about the space program template portion of this, because I remember this from the last project here. So is the space program template is part of the ed spec?
It is part of the ed spec, yes. It's included within it.
Because if I remember how the process went the last time, we had to get the architect who had to create the space program template in concert with a lot of the drawings, and then, put that in there. So,
Right, so what-
is this just the old one?
No, this is the old one, but updated. So I have a copy of the old one here. I have the entire grant application we did last June. The previous one had the existing square footage within the building as it sits today, and then 3 other columns. And he added additional square footage, reduced square footage, and then a net square footage. I again, through these meetings that we had, we condensed all of that into, this is the ideal programmatic space that the school is looking for. This is kind of the starting point for the new architect that will start on Monday or Tuesday.
This
is subject to change. No, this is subject to change, again, based on, so maybe I should explain the process a little bit more. The new architect, they will be charged with coming up with a new layout, a new design. Again, this is programmatic. This isn't necessarily toilets and closets and things like that. This is 12 classrooms, 12 math classrooms, 12 science classrooms, 12 this, 12 that. Then the specialized technology spaces, the computer lab. There's things like that are in here that, in the perfect world, would be an ideal square footage. And then the architect will use that and say, okay, based on all of this, you end up with X size building at X size cost, and then we start to drill into that. And that will, as I mentioned, this is an aggressive schedule. That will happen in probably the first 3 weeks. Yeah, so we don't have the luxury of time on our side with this process. We just don't to get it estimated and reviewed and submitted by June 30th. So they'll be moving extremely fast.
And the new architect will get the old report and any like he said, any documentation from the old application.
Exactly. Yes, they'll get the old grant application. Any deliverable that was generated.
Just like a new path
Right.
for them to start on.
Right.
They hit the ground running. So, Mr. Neville.
Yeah, just to kind of pick up on that, any testing that we did, any stuff for the PCBs, anything that we did for the air testing, any of that stuff, that all flows into the new architect, right?
That all flows to them, correct.
We're not restricting them to the design that came up in the last committee. They, as long as they know what the ed specs are for the program.
Correct.
And the square footage, they have to fit that into whatever that design plan is that they come up with.
Exactly. Yes, they'll come up. Yes, they'll come up with new concepts that will achieve the program requirements. And the layout could be just a giant rectangle. It could remain a circle, a semicircle. Who knows? But that will be their task, as well as the cost. There's a cost associated with that, and the ultimate goal here is to reduce the cost significantly, as a way to entice, the referendum to pass.
Ms. LeBlanc.
Okay, I just need a clarification. Now, you said this is reduced 10,000 square feet from the original?
Yes.
Not from the original size, from the Is larger-
space needs that were submitted, that were approved in May.
It is
It was
still larger
reduced
than the
10,000
original
square
size
feet,
of the
correct.
It's still larger,
Yes.
It is still larger than the existing
but
building.
not as large as, okay, thank you.
Correct. Yep.
Anyone else?
Just,
Mr. Ryder.
just to clarify, when you're saying the expression ed specs, it's the educational requirements.
Program requirements.
Right.
Yes,
For education. Right.
Programming requirements, correct, yes. This document, for those of you that aren't familiar with it, goes through everything. It details what all of the individualized academic spaces require, how many seats per classroom. Again, this document is looking for, this is a tool for the architect to use to generate the new design, the new layout. It gets into a little bit of the site concerns. Again, it's there to help them, guide them.
No, I actually took it as Mr. Ed specs, but
No, I like to ask the questions that people at home might have. So I've been in the joint facility meetings for a couple months now. I fully support this plan, and I hope we're able to, dot all the i's and cross all the t's to get it to move forward. And I just wanted to make sure that people at home understand what we're saying. We say things like ed specs and we talk fast because a lot of people at home have these questions. So I'm speaking for other parents and neighbors.
This is a narrative that the architects will use to essentially design your new space. It outlines everything.
anyone else? Kathy, roll call, please.
Mrs. Riley?
Yes.
Mrs. LeBlanc?
Yes.
Mrs. Hernandez?
Yes.
Mr. Neville?
Yes.
Mr. Ryder?
Yes.
Mr. Renier?
Yes.
Mrs. DePoe?
Yes.
Mr. Rutledge?
Yes.
Chairman Krizel?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. No problem.
11B, discussion and action, if any, regarding snow days. I don't believe we have any.
There is no discussion. I mentioned earlier in the superintendent's report where we were, so there's no sense in being redundant on that.
So we can just maybe move that to old business, just to have it, just in case, but I don't think we're, okay? 11C, fiscal year 2018-2019 school calendar revision. Mr. Drezek.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you're aware, the Board of Ed adopted or approved the 2018-19 school calendar on February 13th of this past year. Obviously, a lot happened between February 13th and March 27th, which led to a lot of questions from not just members of the board, staff members, and a lot of questions from parents. Part of the reason that we're in the predicament that we're in with regards to having to reduce days in the middle of the year like we are this Friday is because unfortunately we start later than most other districts. So just to reiterate for the folks at home, we are statutorily required to hold 180 school days for children. There are no waivers for that. There is a waiver for that through the State Board of Education. However, it has to be for an unusual circumstance. The day prior to me sending the message out to families, we got a letter from Commissioner Wenzel who reiterated that snow days do not count, weather does not count as an unavoidable emergency. And the words of this commissioner was in the State Board of Education is that snow emergencies typically happen in the wintertime, and boards of education have ample time to make up the days between the end of the school year. The other caveat to that is you cannot hold school beyond June 30th of any given year, which means you have 180 days through that you have to complete by June 30th. So the reason that we were in a bit of a predicament this coming year was obviously we were already into the last week of June, and obviously with the situation with JFK this year, having cut down to 180 from 181 days, it made us look at what, and I was asked if we can look at next year's calendar to see if we can sort of avoid the situation we were in this year as far as having to panic to make up days in the event we have another unseasonably crazy winter schedule. So with the information you have in front of you, there are a few changes, and I'll highlight what the changes are. Per union contracts, I do have to discuss any changes to the calendar for the following year with both our union leadership of the teachers union and the union leadership of our administrators union. I have shared this with both of them. They see no objections. There is a misconception in the community that the reason we don't start school until after Labor Day is because the teacher's contract doesn't allow us to do that. That is untrue. The teacher's contract states is that we cannot have a non-student day prior to the Monday before Labor Day. I know that sounds confusing, and it is. But essentially what that means is students can come back whenever the Board of Education says they want to. So you can bring kids back August 1st if you'd want to. You're taking the complaints if you choose to do that, but you can. What the teacher's contract states is we cannot have non-teacher days or non-student days or professional development days prior to that Monday before Labor Day. So that nothing precludes us from starting school prior to Labor Day. It's just we've gotten into a practice of, since we can't bring staff back for professional learning days prior to that Monday, we've gotten into a pattern of holding those days and then bringing all students back after Labor Day. What I'm proposing to you right now is a bit different from what you've already approved. And in the new revised calendar, on the previous calendar you had adopted, the first day back for staff would be Tuesday, August 28th. August 29th and August 30th would be professional learning days as well. And then all students would start on Tuesday, September 4th. What we're proposing in order to start the school year a bit earlier is that we would bring staff back on Monday, August 27th. That would be a half professional learning day, and Tuesday, August 22nd would be a professional learning day. Now the difference is that first day on the original calendar that's approved, which is the Tuesday, August 28th, that's typically the district convocation day in the morning, and then we refer to the second half as the building meeting day. That building meeting day is pretty sacred right now, particularly with schools that are going through NEASC accreditations. They need to meet as a building in order to accomplish that. So we did not want to remove that. So what I've done is we all had to make sacrifices. The sacrifice that I made was I will forfeit a staff convocation this coming school year in order to soften the pain for everyone else so we can fit in the activities we need to fit in prior to students returning. So that now Monday, August 27th would be, in lieu of being convocation and staff building day, would be half professional development, half the other remainder of the day would be the building meeting day as scheduled. Tuesday the 28th would be a full professional development day for teachers, and students would return on Wednesday, August 29th under this calendar. Students would come to school the 29th and the 30th. I would recommend that we make Friday, August 31st, an early release day, which doesn't affect our day count. And that way, folks who are ready for the long weekend and parents who may have plans to go away for Labor Day will have the opportunity to have an early release day, as well as for staff members who typically have that Friday off based on the old calendar. That would essentially bring us to our last day of school. The 181st student day would now be June 12th. And graduation, you could still set a firm graduation date for Tuesday, June 18th. What that does, in essence, is that gives us essentially 3.5 weeks, and then if you count April vacation, 4.5 weeks of wiggle room in the event we get ridiculous, crazy storms that I don't agree with. As part of the new calendar, there's also another slight change. In order to meet the professional obligations that we have with regards to staff working 187 calendar days, 187 work days, we're missing out on another professional learning day. We typically have 3 PD days prior to kids coming back. What we've had to do is reshift one of those PD days to somewhere else in the calendar. And what I'm proposing to you is adding that last professional learning day for staff only to Friday, February 15th. As you know, right now we have a modified February break for families. So Friday, February 15th there would not be students that day. So any families who are trying to make plans for a modified break would have an additional day to do so during February vacation. Our nurses will also appreciate that because it seems during that time, that's when kids all come back with something and they're not gone long enough to clear it out. So the proposal to you this evening is that the 15th would be a professional learning day for staff members, of which we only require another half day because that's the half day we had taken, so it would be a half day for staff members as well. Everyone would have the long weekend. Staff would return on Tuesday the 19th, that's our choice professional development day, and then students would return on Wednesday the 20th. By allowing that, the other caveat to this is, as you notice, Good Friday is not in March next year as it is this year. It doesn't fall until April 19th of next year, which is after April vacation, which again gives us a little bit more flexibility before eating into April break in the event weather gets crazy. It was the perfect storm this year with where days fell and where we were in the calendar. So that would be the new. There's also something new on the right-hand side, and I have to thank Kathy again for, I don't know how she fit all this in, but somehow, I didn't ask questions, she said she'd do it, and you know how Kathy is. You don't argue with Kathy, she gets it done. I wouldn't be standing if it wasn't for her, so thank you. There's a few other changes that I'm proposing that are different from this year's calendar. Right now we have our regular school hours, that hasn't changed. Currently we have a 2-hour delay schedule. What I'm proposing is that we add an additional delay schedule of a 3-hour delay. The reason I'm adding that is, if you can recall, and I believe Mr. Rutledge brought up a very good point of one of the snowstorms when we didn't have school that day. It didn't snow, and then we had to cancel the following day for the cleanup. Part of the decision making is not just the meteorologist. We also speak with the bus company. We also speak with buildings and grounds. And unfortunately, we have a window from about 4 o'clock in the morning to 5 to make a decision. It's hard pre-storm because you don't know what's going to happen. Post-storm, it's difficult because the pressure becomes on our Department of Public Works in order to get the buildings clean. It's not just plowing roads, but they have to have sidewalks. They have to have side roads done. They have to make sure that there isn't ice buildup so kids are going to walk on sidewalks. So there's a lot of that goes into it. During one of these storms, if we had a 3-hour delay in place, we probably could have got the day in. It was one of those, just if I had an extra hour. Unfortunately, for me to make that decision at 5 o'clock in the morning and then to inform parents with something that doesn't currently exist, probably would have been more complaints yielded at us in lieu of the complaints we've gotten for canceling school days. So we didn't have the opportunity to have a 3-hour delay. I think if we put it on the calendar now and educate the public that this is a new option, it'll be something at our disposal going forward to try to protect those days and get kids in if it is at all possible. Again, I'm not putting kids in buses, walking, and people always talk about the roads. We also have a lot of walkers in this district. So that also goes into the decision whether or not we're going to have school or not. Safety of our kids is still going to be paramount in any of these decisions, but the more options we have to get school days in, obviously the more we have at our disposal is more beneficial for the board. Also on this, we have our early release days with lunch schedule, which is currently on our calendar. The early release days without lunch, which used to exist years ago, is what we're implementing for Good Friday. I've actually added it to the official calendar. That again will give us the opportunity. And the reason that we had to do that, just for the board's knowledge and for anyone at home watching, in order for us to get out on a modified early release calendar, transportation becomes an issue. So we cannot run some of the out-of-town buses that we run. We cannot run some of our preschool buses because they're all on a tiered system. So in the modified early release type schedules, if we have the ability to cancel some programming just for, say, preschool, that allows the bus company to get all of our kids in and out and home in the condensed period of time. So that's what will be taking place on Friday. I'm going to propose that we put that in there as an option and start letting parents know that this is also an option so that there are no surprises in the event weather occurs next year. And then obviously the last 2 days of school will still remain early release days as they have in the past. The firm graduation date is still going to be on the 185th day. State law requires that if you do set a firm graduation date, as long as it's within the 185th day, you have the ability to still have graduation depending upon whenever the snow days may occur next year. If you don't have a firm graduation date, you have to move your graduation date accordingly. So I would recommend keeping that. You still have the ability to move a firm graduation date up until April 1st per state law, but unless you put it as a firm date now, you surrender that up, the ability to not have to move it if you don't choose to do so. I'm giving you a lot of information up front. There's also something that was taken off. There is no policy that says that the board is required to go to June 30th before you start taking April vacation days. I got a lot of those questions from people who said, well, it's only the 26th. Why are we taking away these days? That's not a board policy. That's not a law. That was just a note on your calendar that existed since the beginning of time. I've removed that so that way we're not in a position down the road where that can come into question. That caused a lot of confusion for folks when they had gotten the message about what the alternative schedule was going to be. So if you'll see on the new revised draft calendar that I've given you, that has also been removed.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Neville.
I asked two questions.
Sure.
I know why you took it off, but the Sharpies will come out and say that if you don't have it somewhere, whether it be in a policy or not, that's your prerogative, that if we get to a certain point, you can start taking them off the April vacation. Because I remember when this stuff started. I don't think it was the end of the beginning of time, because I was still around then, I think so. But I think you need to have it in writing somewhere. And you may want to look at Rich and look at it as a policy, but I think it has to be clear, I think, to people that if we get to a certain point in June, it's the superintendent's prerogative to start taking days off. I think we also have it in the teacher contract, so they know that, don't they?
It's that, no,
That's certainly
they
implied.
reserve the right. If the school year is adjusted, if their work year is adjusted, then that's a mandatory subject of bargaining. So we have the right to change the calendar as much as we want, as long as it doesn't affect their working conditions or their work year or their work day. So it's not necessarily a union issue. And we've been in conjunction with both the unions that this would have an effect to tell them that this is the time to do it.
I haven't heard you say it because I haven't hired any staff with you, but I know when we've hired staff, we've told them if you're going to make plans for April vacation, you better buy cancellation
By trip insurance.
Because
Yeah, that's a common theme right now. Fortunately, those who are planning to have trips, both for families and for staff members, it doesn't look like by doing what we have done. And essentially, I guess we haven't had this conversation in public about the decision to go to school on Good Friday in lieu of taking a day in April vacation. We didn't have that necessarily the right to unilaterally do that because we do have some employee groups who have that in their contract as a defined holiday. So I reached out to all the union leadership in the district and said, what would you rather have? We need to take a day. We're already getting dangerously close. Part of the concern that we have, and I'll share this, and Andy's sick of hearing me talk about weather because I know I am. One of the concerns that we all had, and this is not just Enfield specific, this is specific to the region, we subscribe to 3 different meteorological services. And we have one in particular who works just for us. He also he consults with almost every district in the state, but we have a specified group where he actually speaks directly for us, looks at the radar report for our area. One of the things that was alarming to all of us was this pattern that we have seen throughout the month of March didn't show any signs at the time this decision was made of going away until the end of April. Now, that didn't necessarily mean that we were going to be seeing snow in the end of April, but our concern was that if we have an active weather pattern that would force school cancellation, whether it be storm, whether it be a snowstorm, whether it be some sort of tropical storm, if power's knocked out to half of the town, which we actually had in if you know, one of the days that we canceled was in October, if roads are closed because there's debris, whatever reason, it doesn't have to be snow. If we had gotten past April vacation and didn't utilize any of these days to us, we would only have 2 days left on the calendar to make up from April 16th until June 26th, 27th, whatever day we were at. So our concern for this particular year was if those days pass, we're not going to be in a position, and we can't go to school on weekends. So we had to make a decision, which I know was difficult for families. Changing the calendar around gives us more flexibility for next year, so we're not in the same predicament as we were during this past school year.
Chris, I agree with what you're doing. I'm just saying, just legalistically, you may want to put it down that it's in your prerogative to make that change.
That's all. The determination is there. I think what was making
fine.
some confusion was it was automatically stated that we're going to go to the last day before we take off for many days. So it's just a matter of, I think you're right. We do need to educate the public, not just staff members, but families. And we're trying to make the calendar as easy on families as well. We know people have planned vacations. They have planned times where they need daycare issues. I mean, there's things like that that have to go into consideration for
I
this.
think you've done a
But
great
you're
job.
right.
I think you've done a great job. The other question I had of the two has to do with the early release days with lunch and without. Unless I heard you wrong, and I certainly can't hear that well, you had said on Good Friday they are going to have lunch or they're not?
There
gonna
is
have
not lunch on Good
Okay, I
Friday.
think you said they were going to have lunch, but that's okay. That's me. Going back to the calendar on the 31st of August.
Correct.
It says early release day. It doesn't say lunch or without lunch.
That would be early release with lunch. We would only do an early release.
Because I'm just, this is for Kathy's sake. When you did November, you have the 21st early release day with lunch. You may want to add that early release day with lunch, just so it's clear.
And part of the reason, the difference between serving lunch and not serving lunch is having to cancel some of the out-of-town buses and have to cancel some of the preschool and Head Start programs.
I think if I could interject, I think though, are you saying that basically to just specify that it's a without lunch? On the
I think,
calendar?
one way or the
with
other.
lunch.
I was pretty sure it was with lunch, but
It is.
we're stated in one case that it was with lunch, in the other case, it was going to be with lunch, but it didn't state. Just be consistent. Yeah.
If I could just say one thing.
Sure.
Please.
I work magic, but I can't do a lot of things with only this much space. So I might just get rid of that with lunch, so it's consistently off with lunch. But when Mr. Barassa does his lovely messages, he will say with lunch.
So, sorry, to be clear, it's any planned early release day will
Is
always
with
be
lunch.
with
Always
lunch.
with lunch.
It's only these few exceptions due to weather
that's a very
that we
good
may
point, John.
use an early release without lunch.
It is. And the only time we would enact this early release without lunch would be in the event of an emergency where we knew, like, for instance, one of these past storms, the one, quite honestly, that Mr. Rutledge was referencing, that it didn't actually end up snowing. Well, we've been here long enough, I'm going to tell you anyway. So just to put in perspective, the evening before, we were notified that for all intents and purposes, the heavy snow was going to begin somewhere in the vicinity of 2 o'clock. So if you can get your kids home safe off the bus by 2 o'clock, you can get by with an early release. Well, unfortunately for us, our little guys don't get on the bus until 1:50, which means I can't get them guarantee that they're home before there's a whiteout. So if you all would recall, that Tuesday evening, Wednesday evening, my days are mixing up. A lot of area that I mentioned, there's an area group that we all have a conversation with in the morning. We all started speaking and saying, well, what if we just knock back an hour or so? And we all have different schedules. So we all decided if we're going to mess with the schedule, we're all going to do it uniformly so that it doesn't look like one person had this great idea or a bad idea. So Mr. Longy and I spent from about 8 p.m. to about midnight coming up with what you see now as the early release schedule. About 4 o'clock in the morning, I got a phone call from the meteorologist, said, change of plans. It's now 11 a.m. And my response was, we don't have a plan for 11 a.m. I just spent all night coming up with a plan to get them home by 2. At that point, we all just caved and said we have to pull the plug. As you know, we didn't see a snowflake till about 11 p.m. the following night. But unfortunately, we have to make a decision based on what's given to us at the time. So yes, to answer your question, and we will be more clear when obviously we roll this out to faculty and staff, but we would really only try to utilize that early release without lunch in days where there were emergencies.
So maybe just note somewhere here that all the early release days are with lunch.
Planned early release,
Yeah,
correct.
all the planned early release days are with lunch, if we could just add that somewhere in here.
Yeah, we can add something to that.
What? Yes, well, we're still in discussion, so.
To reconsider?
I don't think as a point of order, I don't think we can reconsider because it was more than our last meeting ago.
Oh, okay.
You can only do a motion to reconsider at the meeting following the vote.
Reconsider what? What?
The old calendar.
No, this, we're now approving a revised calendar, so,
So the reconsideration is moved.
yeah. So with the changes we just spoke about, so, any other discussion? So,
Second.
Kathy, roll call.
Mrs. Riley?
Yes.
Mrs. LeBlanc?
Yes.
Mrs. Hernandez?
Yes.
Mr. Neville?
Yes.
Mr. Ryder?
I approve.
Mr. Renier?
Yes.
Mrs. DePoe?
Yes.
Mr. Rutledge?
Affirmative.
Chairman Krizel?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Gotta have an affirmative, doesn't it? Moving on, 11D, appoint Suffield VOAG Consulting Committee member. Mr. Drezek, I hope. What is this?
So, board leadership serves as the board liaison to the Suffield Regional Agri-Science Center, commonly referred to as Suffield VOAG. The duties as liaisons are similar to those performed by board members who serve as liaisons to our local schools through the Adopt a School appointments. As with most schools, Suffield VOAG also maintains an advisory committee called the Suffield Agri-Science Consulting Committee. The committee is made up of citizens from 10 communities participating in the VOAG program. They're appointed for 3-year terms. I'm not going to pronounce their names, but Adam and Francis were appointed by the board in 2010. Mr. Bojoris, I don't want to mispronounce. I'm sorry if you're listening, sir. Stepping down from this consulting committee. The Suffield VOAG is requesting that the board endorse the continued appointment of Francis Litwanis and the new appointment of Sam Smith to the Suffield Agri-Science Consulting Committee. These gentlemen will be available to confer with board liaisons or the entire board or any issues related to VOAG, and the administration supports their appointment. Therefore, the board wishes to take any action deemed appropriate regarding the appointment of Francis Litwanis and Sam Smith to the Suffield Agri-Science Consulting Committee.
Point of information, are these people Enfield residents?
Yes.
Okay, so we have to have, what, 2 or 3 on there?
2.
Okay.
So a motion to approve the members mentioned, moved by Mr. Rutledge, seconded by Ms. LeBlanc. Any discussion? Please.
Would there be an opportunity to actually meet these gentlemen at some point?
Once they're approved, yes, they'd be like a liaison to any other committee. They can come in front of the board as you see fit.
Any other discussion? Kathy, roll call, please.
Mrs. Riley?
Yes.
Mrs. LeBlanc?
Yes.
Mrs. Hernandez?
Yes.
Mr. Neville? Mr. Ryder?
Yes.
Mr. Renier?
Yes.
Mrs. DePoe?
Yes.
Mr. Rutledge?
Yes.
Chairman Krizel?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, we need to add an 11E, we need to add to cancel our April 10th meeting, so we need to add that to the agenda. Do I have a motion? So moved by Mr. Neville, seconded by Ms. Riley. This is to add 11E, cancel April 10th meeting, a regular scheduled meeting because of school vacation week. Is that a roll call or is that by hand? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Riley?
Yes.
Mrs. LeBlanc?
Yes.
Mrs. Hernandez?
Yes.
Mr. Neville?
Yes.
Mr. Ryder?
Yes.
Mr. Renier?
Yes.
Mrs. DePoe?
Yes.
Mr. Rutledge?
Yes.
Chairman Krizel?
Yes.
Motion passes.
So now I need a motion to approve us canceling April 10th regular scheduled meeting.
So moved.
So moved by Mr. Rutledge, seconded by Mr. Renier. Any discussion? So we are canceling April 10th regularly scheduled meeting here in Town Council Chambers due to school vacation week. Kathy, roll call, please.
Mrs. Riley?
Yes.
Mrs. LeBlanc?
Yes.
Mrs. Hernandez?
Yes.
Mr. Neville?
Yes.
Mr. Ryder?
Yes.
Mr. Renier?
Yes.
Mrs. DePoe?
Yes.
Mr. Rutledge?
Yes.
Chairman Krizel?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Mr. Chairman, just a point
Yes.
of information, our committees, joint facilities in particular, will still be meeting
Oh,
during that
yes,
time.
yes.
Just so.
This is only canceling
There's
April
only
10th
one
regular meeting.
Because we have a timeline we have to stick
No,
to.
no, I'm not. No, this is only canceling the one meeting. Okay, board committee reports, curriculum, Mr. Neville.
We had a very spirited meeting at the last meeting. We had 2 items on the agenda, but it kept us, what, 2.5 hours, I think?
3.
Was it 3? Okay. Thought anybody was counting here. Okay, basically.
Do I have 3.5? Do I hear 3.5?
basically, we had asked to have a pathways presentation. There's a lot of information in terms like pathways and stuff like that, and extra credits and how you get them. And so we had asked John Degg to come through Michelle to come and give us a presentation, which he did. So he gave us a presentation on our Pathways program, which actually involves a number of entities, including ACC. And it's a way that it's a program that allows students to earn credit to its high school graduation. At last week's meeting, Mr. Degg provided the committee with a handout with a list of all courses at Enfield High School with the potential for college credit. This list was broken down by AP courses, ACC, which is Nuntic, Charter Oak College, UConn, and UNH. I forget what UNH stands for. Do you remember?
New
Was it
Haven.
I don't think it was New Hampshire. I don't think it was New Haven. I'll find out anyway. Anyway, Mr. Degg explained the newly approved EMT certificate program, which the curriculum committee just approved 2 meetings ago, I think, which is really kind of a neat program. That's going to take place at Nuntic beginning in the 2018-2019 school year. It's a 2-credit course, and all student requirements were explained. I think they offer something like this at Ellington High School, and they have for years, and they run the EMT program over there. It's a neat program, and kids would get the opportunity to get it. And upon turning, I think, 18, they could get licensed, if I'm not mistaken. It allows students to take certain courses at Enfield High School and then fill out an application to have this Nuntic grant the credits for these courses. For ACC to grant these credits, the students must have a certain score on the AccuPlacer test or on the SAT or ACT math test. John Degg reviewed the College Connections program. This is integrated with the Enfield Public Schools 5-year program with Nuntic. The goal of this program is for students to have enough credits by the end of high school that their first year at Nuntic is completed, which is pretty neat. It was explained that the increased numbers, the enrollment numbers for College Connections has been increasing over the last 3 or 4 years, if I'm not mistaken. John, as usual, gave us a superb presentation. He really kind of just took it right to the top. And we've asked him, as we have asked Michelle Middleton and the other people who have presented things, to come back to the board and present it. We're looking to use this forum as an educational opportunity, not only for the board, but for the public that watches us on TV. And I think there's a lot of stuff out there. We get caught up in using acronyms and stuff like that that not everybody understands. And we don't mean to kind of take them off track. But I think if we get it on TV and we put it out here, John will do a great job and it'll give you a chance to ask some questions as well. So we asked him to come, and from the board chair to the superintendent, if we can get this on a future agenda, that would be great. Sounds like it'll probably be at the last meeting in April or somewhere in that, since we just canceled the first meeting in April. The second was a JFK looping discussion. And looping is a process that's been going on for about 25 or 30 years at the middle school, strictly between 7th and 8th grade. Not the 6th grade not included, which puzzled me because that came up as a question that it was included. It is not, and it's just 7th and 8th grade. Mr. Sigalski, the principal, Mr. Ponte, and Ms. Gaskell came to the committee to propose elimination of looping in 7th and 8th grade at JFK for the 2018-2019 school year. The presentation discussed curriculum mastery, teacher expertise versus teacher familiarity with students' social and academic skills, and an explanation of recent instructional shifts for some subjects, particularly science, English, social studies, and math. We had, and what I said before, was an extensive discussion on the proposed change, the academic and developmental pros and cons if they implemented it, the existence of data from other middle schools detailing its superiority over the current looping organization, which is currently in place, as well as specifics on how teams would be organized, the distribution of special ed youngsters, boys, girls, etc., and whether teams would stay together as a unit when moving from one teacher team to the other, and how this change, with its pros and cons, would be communicated to parents. The committee had a lot of questions, and it was a good discussion, but we felt there were many questions regarding the implementation that needed to be resolved before the committee could make a recommendation to the full board. It was a good discussion, and the JFK group was asked to come back at a later date with more specificity on the proposed implementation, and it was tabled until that time. Do you guys have anything you want to add to that?
Just that our next meeting is April 16th, so hopefully we should have some more information before our end of April board meeting.
Sounds great.
Yeah, and I just want to second. I'd love to have Mr. Daig have an opportunity to come and present because he did a wonderful job. And it was fascinating to hear how our students can take advantage of these programs and really gain access to high-quality education, not just in Enfield school system, but also getting those college credits. We have some very clever students who are taking really interesting ways to get college credits. So I thought it was phenomenal, and I think we would all benefit from it.
Oh, I'm sorry. I finally got my text. Okay, so anything else on? So we're all set there. Finance, Ms. Riley.
I have nothing to report. The last meeting was postponed until April 9th.
Policy, Mr. Renier.
The meeting on Tuesday.
Is that this Tuesday?
Leadership, Mr. Cruzel. We did meet, and we pretty much went over everything we met about, the school calendar and everything, so resolved that. Joint facilities, we had an update from Chris, and we're moving forward every Thursday. Today's this week we're starting at 5:30, which I'm not sure. But yeah, the agenda said at 5, but they're not starting the interviews till 5:30. So I guess we're just gonna have our meeting before. So 5 o'clock this Thursday, downstairs Enfield Room.
As Chris said, we have a very, very tight time frame to get this thing resolved.
Yes.
And to have a design and all of the details we need for the application to the state by June 30th. We're looking to do this by the end of May. Okay, we'll get you a timeline. We just got it given to us the other day, but it's an aggressive timeline, and we have to have it that way, or we won't make it, and then we'd have to put it off for another year.
High school building committee, we're meeting on the 19th, and I think there's like 3 more meetings left, and we're going to dissolve that committee. So. I did get an update on the Buzz Robotics. They
heard you.
Yes, well, I guess they're still working over at the annex on the next competition. So they were number 7 team captain and had to play number 2 team, and they got trashed. So I don't know if I should be reading this, but they did good all in all, and it was a great weekend. So I'm just reading what I got texted. So Peter, it's your fault. And then we did forget one thing. Isn't next Wednesday, isn't it finally the special kite meeting that has been delayed 2 months in a row? So yes. next Wednesday at 5:30. The 5th, right? No, April 4th. April 4th. April 4th, Wednesday at 5:30 over at Stowe is the 3rd attempt to get this meeting done due to snow days. And that's all we have for committees. So number 13, approval of minutes. Do I have a motion? Motion by Mr. Neville, seconded by Mr. Rutledge. Any discussion? All in favor? 9-0. Number 14, approval of accounts and payroll.
There's nothing right
None. Number 15, correspondence and communications. There's none. Number 16, executive session. Do we have a need for executive session? Yes, we do. So moved by Mr. Neville, seconded by Mr. Rutledge. Any discussion? All in favor of executive session? We are in executive session, and we will not be returning to public. So good night, everyone. Thank you.